We are now at chapter 39, verse 11, of the book of Job. Will you trust him because his strength is great, or will you leave your labor to him? Notes. Now, as stated, this type of bull cannot be domesticated. It's actually, in my opinion, it's talking about a rhinoceros, which would also give some indication as to why it might actually be called a unicorn, but be that as it may. Verse 12. Will you believe him that he will bring home your seed and gather it into your barn? Gavest thou the goodly wings unto the peacocks, or wings and feathers unto the ostrich, which leaves her eggs in the earth and warms them in dust, and forgets that the foot may crush them, or that the wild beast may break them? She is hardened against her young ones, as though they were not hers. Her labor is in vain without fear. Because God has deprived her of wisdom, neither has he imparted to her understanding. What time she lifts up herself on high, she scorns the horse and his rider. Notes. This is talking about a ostrich going at full pace, and the fastest horse can little catch the ostrich, at least whenever she starts to really get going. Verse 19. Have you given the horse strength? Have you clothed his neck with thunder? Can you make him afraid as a grasshopper? The glory of his nostrils is terrible. He paws in the valley and rejoices in his strength. He goes on to meet the armed men. He mocks at fear and is not affrighted. Neither turns he back from the sword. The quiver rattles against him, the glittering spear and the shield. He swalloweth the ground with fierceness and rage. Neither believes he that it is the sound of the trumpet. He says among the trumpets, Ha ha, and he smells the battle afar off, the thunder of the captains and the shouting. Notes. Now, this is rather poetic here, but anyways, yet the horse eats only grass or such like feed, and, well, take a look at how strong they are. Verse 26. Does the hawk fly by your wisdom and stretch her wings toward the south? Does the eagle mount up at your command and make her nest on high? She dwells and abides on the rock, upon the crag of the rock and the strong place. And from thence she seeks the prey, and her eyes behold afar off. Notes. This is kind of a shot in the dark for me, but I have been told that certain species of eagles can spot a mouse miles and miles away. Well, be that as it may again. Verse 30. Her young ones also suck up blood, and where the slain are, there is she. Chapter 40. Moreover, the Lord answered Job and said, Shall he who contends with the Almighty instruct him? He who reproves God, let him answer it. Notes. Now, one of the most basic sins of the human race is contending with the Almighty. Men have a tendency to blame God for the terrible problems of mankind. Okay? When the truth of the matter is, it has always been man who has loused things up, and not God, not once. Verse 3. Then Job answered the Lord and said, Behold, I am vile. What shall I answer you? I will lay my hand upon my mouth. Notes. Job, now convicted of his ignorance and his impotence and his sinfulness, at last learns the lesson that it seems none of us can learn without at least some such trial. Now, as a son of Adam, he was a total moral wreck, and consequently, he hated himself, though he had done all he could to do live right. I mean, he's recognizing that he is morally bankrupt, and he even stated that he knew that someone was going to have to save him later or earlier on. Now, he did not learn this humiliating lesson so long as he confronted the church of that time, his three little friends who knew something about God, but he learned it directly when he entered into the sinless light of the presence of God. And that light showed his comeliness to actually be corruption and his righteousness to be as filthy rags. and you can look up filthy rags in your Strong's Concordance, and it's actually talking about menstrual rags. Okay, that makes it even dirtier. Verse 5. Once have I spoken, but I will not utter. Yes, twice, but I will proceed no further. Notes. Well, he's realizing now the futility and even the foolishness of his arguments. Verse 6. Then answered the Lord unto Job out of the whirlwind, and said, Gird up your loins now like a man. I will demand of you, and declare thou unto me. In other words, it's time to speak up. Job is given every opportunity of making good his pleas before God. Well, if he has anything to say that he really wishes to urge, God is ready, and he's very anxious to hear him. But let's see what happens. Verse 8. Will you also disannul my judgment? Will you condemn me that you may be righteous? Notes. Well, men have been trying to disannul the judgment of God right from the very beginning. Well, the bottom line is that God's judgment is His Word. Verse 9. Have you an arm like God, or can you thunder with a voice like Him? Deck yourself now with majesty and excellency, and array yourself with the glory and beauty. Notes. Now, of course, Job could not do that, but the Lord could do it for Job, and in fact, He ultimately did. That's kind of a jab at Job's physical condition, if you ask me. Verse 11. Cast abroad the rage of your wrath, and behold everyone who is proud, and abase him. Look on everyone who is proud, and bring him low, and tread down the wicked in their place. Notes. In other words, Job is a mere mortal, and he cannot do that which God alone can do, and neither can any other man. So, be that as it may. Verse 13. Hide them in the dust together, and bind their faces in secret. Then will I also confess unto you that your own right hand can save you. Notes. Well, he dropped the hammer right there pretty good. Man's problem has ever been that he thinks that he can save himself. Well, there is only one answer for man, and that is Jesus Christ and Him crucified. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 23. Verse 15. Behold now the behemoth, which I made with you. He eats grass as an ox. Notes. Now, it's my personal opinion, and I haven't really checked into this, but I think the behemoth is actually referring to the African hippo. And this particular animal does eat grass, and we'll read on and discover more. Verse 16. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of God. He who made him can make his sword to approach unto him. Notes. And well, in that day, God alone could bring down such a beast, okay? It would take a dozen men at least to even hope of taking some animal like that down. And even then, you're risking your neck quite a bit, because when a mother or a father hippo, a mature hippo, gets really ticked off, you're tangling with the wrong kind of beast, okay? Verse 20. Now surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. He lies under the shady trees, in the covert of the reed and fens. Notes. Well, that's almost a picture right there of a hippopotamus, and far less of an elephant or a rhino or any other such animal, at least that I can think of. Verse 22. The shady trees cover him with their shadow. The willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinks up a river, and hastens not. He trusts that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He takes it with his eyes. His nose pierces through snares. Notes. Now, once again, why would the Lord address these things which seem to have no bearing whatsoever on Job's situation? Well, the idea is simple, that this great contest which Job caught in the middle between God and Satan is being played out before the entire spirit world. And among other things, the Lord desires to show the futility of man, and even Satan and fallen angels, that contending with him is it cannot successfully be done. It may look like it at first, but it ultimately fails. Chapter 41. Can you draw out Leviathan with an hook, or his tongue with a cord which you let down? Notes. Now, you'll get all kinds of bizarre teachings about this particular chapter. This chapter is no doubt one of the most misunderstood in the entirety of the Word of God. Many have ascertained the description as to refer to some type of huge animal. However, there are certain things said that make us understand that God was not speaking of some such creature, but rather this is a description given of Satan himself. He is portrayed as a great dragon who is the enemy of both God and man. And we'll read on, verse 2. Can you put a hook in his nose, or bore his jaw through with a thorn? Notes. Well, the Lord is telling us here that within himself, or that man within himself, he cannot subdue Satan, not so much as a hook in his jaw. Well, the battle is not physical, mental, or financial. It is somewhat mental, but the battle is ultimately spiritual. And being spiritually and morally bankrupt, man is absolutely defenseless against him. Well, with the exception of God and Jesus. Verse 3. Will he make many supplications unto you? Will he speak soft words unto you? Notes. Now we know that Satan plies the heart of man continually, seeking to deceive him and thereby to lead him astray. And deception, unfortunately, is his greatest weapon. He sure likes to use soft words to carry it through to its successful conclusions. As a matter of fact, he's going to do that whenever he appears as the Antichrist. Well, we'll discuss that a little bit later. Well, much later, actually. Verse 4. Will he make a covenant with you? Will you take him for a servant forever? Notes. Satan strongly desires to make a covenant with man. He will promise riches, power, influence, fame, and so on and so forth. Well, inasmuch as he is a liar and the father of it, he will make any covenant that man likes, knowing that he will not keep his side of the bargain. Verse 5. Will you play with him as a bird, or will you bind him for your maidens? Notes. Now, unfortunately, untold millions attempt to do this very thing every single day. However, they soon find out that Satan and sin, they're not playthings. They can inflict deadly and mortal wounds upon people. And you better have Christ as your covering. Verse 6. Shall the companions make a banquet of him? Shall they part him among the merchants? Notes. Now, how many hundreds of millions through the centuries have thought that they were man or woman enough to defeat Satan in their own strength? Well, they found out the hard way that they just simply cannot do it. God and Satan, quite frankly, are so far above us right now in our current condition that it is absolutely stupid to think that you could match it. Verse 7. Can you fill his skin with barbed irons, or his head with fish spears? Notes. Now, let it ever be understood that Satan does not respond to natural weapons. Whacking him over the head with a stick is utterly ridiculous. He cannot be harmed in that particular way. But you bring Christ into the equation, and you bring faith to your front doorstep, Satan will not be there to answer. Verse 8. Lay your hand upon him. Remember the battle. Do no more. And unfortunately, we'll pick right up in chapter 41, verse 8 of the book of Job. I'll go ahead and I'll read the same verse. Thank you, and God bless.